Looks like it's one, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know some other people are still logging in, so I really wanted to jump in today and start off with showing some slides that Gary Keller went over when we were at family reunion last week that I thought were really interesting. So just out of curiosity, some of you are newer than others. Where do you think most of agents' listings come from? Does anyone have anything they can share where their listings have been coming from, or where you think overall listings come from? Anybody? Such a quiet group this past couple weeks.
I put it in the chat, but I did referrals and social media.
I love it. Thank you. And it's hard for me to manage the chat while we're on and I have a share screen. That bar doesn't show up on my screen right now. So please feel free, everyone, just unmute yourself and jump right in with your questions. So yeah, that's fantastic. So here, this is one of the slides that Gary went over, and I just wanted to start with this, even though our topic today is going to be winning the listing at every appointment. I thought it would be interesting for you all to kind of see some of this information as well. So how sellers found their agents. You can see here on this graph, by the way, I uploaded all of these slides in the Google Drive. This is what Gary went over. I believe it was last Tuesday when we were at family reunion. He does this every year. And there's lots of great slides, which I'll be sharing periodically, depending on our topic. This is also something that's really great to print and bring on a listing appointment. I think it's really important for our clients to see where business comes from and what helps sellers make decisions, what's important to them when choosing an agent. In any case, you can kind of see as you follow along, it goes back to 2006 and it kind of jumps through to last year stats. So what I thought was great to see for all of you guys to see that 39%, which is a huge difference between all the other stats here, were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. So that's how most sellers find their agents, is some type of a referral. The next thing, it drops down to that they used that agent previously. So if we look at these two figures, the rest of everything else is very, very small. So what that means is if I have sold a house to or for a client and I have them in a past client database where I'm constantly, emailing them, mailing to them, doing pop buys, calling them a couple times a year, it's very likely that they'll use my business again. So like just in the past 6 months, I listed, sold, and then sold the new home to a past client of mine that one was 10 years ago and the other one was like 12 years ago. So I just recently in the past 6 months had 4 transactions, and actually one of those listings I sold myself. So that was 5 transactions from a past client that I worked with 10 plus years ago, because I have them in a past client database that I'm constantly dripping on them and sending them, cards at Christmas time and different pop buys throughout the year. So I wanted to kind of go over that. And then it just really drops from there. Personal contact by an agent, that would be like just random farming potentially. Referred by another agent, visited open houses, only 3%. Direct mails, which would be like farming a neighborhood, only 2. Saw contact information from an open house sign. As we can see, all of these other things drop drastically. Doesn't mean that we can't get business from those sources, but it just is very low. I also thought this was very interesting. Seller interviews. So this is how many, and again, through the years, I'm going to really just focus on 2023, however. So 81% of sellers only met with one agent. That's a huge number. So that means that chances are, as long as they get your name in front of them somehow, they're probably not even going to look at any other competition. So the likelihood that you're going to be up against somebody is only a 12%, and that's only you and one other person. And so today, when we go into the listing presentation and all of that, that's going to be very helpful, in particular if you are up against another agent. What sellers want from their agent, and I really was surprised and loved this, to help price their home competitively was 22%, which I thought was really great because we get a lot of pushback. And so today, when we go through the class, we've got some scripts in there on how to handle those objections. And then to help the seller market the property to buyers, help the sell in a specific time frame. So those are all pretty close. I would say that overall, the general public knows that, listing their house with an agent's probably going to get them more for their house and have it happen in a timely manner. And then it kind of just goes down from there for what else they want from an agent. And most important factors for a seller was reputation. So that is where, like, your presence on social media, how you stand in the community, the people that refer you and what they say about you. That was the most important factor to sellers, was the agent's reputation. Do not mistake reputation for experience. Experience, that's not the top priority. Like, if you're a newer agent, it's okay. It's your reputation overall that is most important to them. And then, of course, honesty and trustworthiness. Friend or a family member, knowledge of the neighborhood, and then on down from there. I also found it really interesting that only 5% felt it was important that the commission was the right amount. So that means that very few sellers are seeking their agent as an important factor based on how low their commission structure was. Sellers, repeats, and referrals, 85%. So overall, I can say that obviously that you're going to have the better chance of, in particular, getting a lead that's a listing from someone who's referring you business or repeat business, because you've been keeping in, touch with them. We're just going to do one more here, and then it jumps to buyers, and we'll save that for another day. Method used to sell a home: sell their home with a broker, or an agent. So 89% sell their house with an agent and a brokerage. Only 7% is for sale by owner, and then again, other random things there. So we've got a really good odds that the general public's going to use us, and in particular, if we're referring, we're actually calling our database and asking them to refer us business. So any questions on that before I move on? Just need to get this out of my way. All right. One second. So I already put this in the Google Drive today. So for those of you looking here, here's the Google Drive. I added a folder called Glover Get the Listing, and that's where today's class is coming from. So I've had the fortune of going to, I don't know if all of you follow Jeff Glover. Jeff Glover is a KW agent/team up in Michigan. And he does come to Ohio and teach all-day classes sometimes. So if you ever have an opportunity, I highly recommend it. I've gone to some of his all-day classes. I've also last year went to Orlando to his 3-day event, and he was a guest speaker hosting a breakout session this year at Family Reunion. So I thought this was a great topic. So I took a lot of really great notes and thought this would be a great class for us to have. Before I move on, any questions about those slides or where you can find them? So just want to see who's on here. All right. Well, we're going to just jump right in there. All right. So 3 steps to getting the listing at every appointment per Jeff Glover. So we're going to kind of just break this down and talk a little bit about different scenarios. I would love to hear your feedback and questions. But those 3 are presentation, pre-listing packet and 5 touches before the appointment. And again, you guys, you can take notes, but this is all in the Google Drive for you to access. So let's just jump right in to the most important, as Jeff said, was presentation. So 3 things before you go. The pre-qualification. So that's the questions that you ask before the appointment. So some of you who have come to other classes about preparing for a listing appointment, and also a lot of you guys on here I've met with personally to help you prepare for listing appointments that you've had coming up. We have something in the Google Drive in the seller training folder called the Red Sheet. The Red Sheet is your pre-listing phone call qualification questionnaire. This is not something that you send to the client to fill out. You actually schedule your pre-qual phone call. I like to schedule that like it's an appointment. I want the seller to feel like this is the first step of the appointment. I definitely try to, as Jeff had mentioned, he agrees, to do a one-step listing appointment. So let me first explain what that means. So back in the day, 25 years ago, agents used to do a 2-step appointment. So that means that you would go out, you would take notes, you would talk with the sellers, you would go over some of your marketing materials, and then you would not come with a CMA. And then you'd schedule your step 2 to go back with your market analysis and then potentially do contracts. There's just too much time between that for the seller to, one, talk to other agents or change their mind. And they're also disappointed that you didn't come with the market analysis. So we definitely, I mean, I don't even know the last time I did a 2-step. The only time we're forced into a 2-step is if you go out, you give all the information, and you already know they're just not ready to list right now, that they still have some things to get ready with the house or all of that. And that kind of just forces a natural 2-step. I still want the client to feel like we are doing a 2-step. So that's why the first phone call appointment, we'll say, is done, as a pre-qual call. So basically what the script would be with that is, hey, so-and-so, I'm so excited to come out and take a look at your house on Friday, but I wondered if you had any availability on Wednesday morning for us to do an appointment over the phone so I can get all the details about your house to be able to help me prepare. That's the script. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes I don't say while on the phone, do you have time for a quick 15-minute appointment right now on the phone? I want them to really feel like we're already starting to work for them before we get there. And then the series of questions that you're going to ask, which are on that red sheet, there's a couple that Jeff had went over in class that when I was there last week. But basically, it's the things that I don't know from like the tax site. I always run the address on the MLS before I make the call to see if it's ever been on the market. So keep this in mind. Our MLS is not even 30 years old. So that means anybody that has sold their house with an agent before that time, it was not on the MLS because we didn't have the MLS. So running somebody's address on the MLS is only going to show up if they have sold in the past 30 years. Well, a little less than that. So I run that because I want to see if there's any information I can find there. I'll caution you this, I do not use somebody else's room sizes. I don't use somebody else's remarks. That's not why I'm looking. It's just going to help me out from the previous sale if there's anything that can help me look for comparables. On that pre-qual call, I'm going to ask a series of questions about the property. Here's a couple of questions that Jeff had mentioned that he always asks. If what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident in my ability in getting your home sold, will you be ready to list on blank date? And so here you'll also see that it says note save any objections for the appointment. So what that means is this: if somebody says something, because there's a lot of answers that could come up from that question, sometimes they say, oh gosh, I don't know. It depends on what's your commission. What's your commission, by the way? Try to avoid answering those type of questions on the phone. That's something that's just better said once you sit there and then you have an opportunity to show your value before getting into answering those types of questions. They may even say, well, it just depends on what you think we should list the house for. What do you think we should list the house for? I mean, how could you possibly know right now? You haven't even gotten the information on the house. So it could just be a simple yes or no, or they'll run into a series of objections that I would say, again, save for the appointment. Question number 2, would you please tell me about your home? This is a great conversation to determine their disc personality. So what I want to know is, going in, if this is a high D, they're just going to give quick, short answers. They're going to say, here's a square footage. This is how many bedrooms and baths, which, by the way, we can see on the tax record. If they're a high S, they're going to talk about, oh my gosh, my grandmother's chandeliers in the dining room, and we really spent so much time choosing all of the wallpaper in the house. Like, those are kinds of things that a high S are they're warm and fuzzy people. A high C is gonna give you stats. And a high I is gonna just talk about all the things they love about the house. So that's gonna help you. And guys, if you guys don't all know what DISC is, please let me know. I'll send you, if you haven't taken it, the link to take your DISC personality test. It's definitely helpful if you know your personality type to be able to learn how to adjust your type when you're with a client. It works in real life too. So like, I'm a high D and I. So I know that if I'm with an SC, I need to slow down. I need to compliment the house and then stick to facts. A high I is going to want to be your best friend. So it's really helpful to know how you need to adjust your personality type if you can go in knowing what theirs is. And usually with this question, you can tell what their personality type is based on how they answer and how long it takes them to give you the answer. Question 3, who else, if anyone, are you meeting with? And the reason we want to know that is, number 1, do we in fact have competition that we're up against? What I would also lead into right after that is, will they be meeting with you before or after I'm there? It's really important to know that, because if sometimes it's good to be the last man in, but sometimes it's good to be the first one there, because if you can knock their socks off, they'll list with you and then you can offer to cancel their other appointments. Let me also mention, this is also in one of the scripts. If I'm the first one there, or if there's anyone coming after me, and I feel like we've made this connection, we agree on price, they like my marketing, I will offer to cancel their appointments for them. A lot of times sellers just feel bad to call and cancel on someone, so they'll keep the appointment just so they don't have to make that call. So if we offer to call that agent for them and cancel and just let them know that we have got the listing and that we were just calling on the behalf of our seller, it takes that weight off of their shoulders and puts that on our plate, if that makes sense. So there's another series of things on our red sheet that we're asking about. Another thing that's not on here, I was just trying to stick to the Jeff stuff, but on our red sheet, if you're familiar with it, it also says, tell me what you love about your home. Tell me any updates that you've made to the home in the past 5 years. And there's also the question, tell me a little bit about what you think the house is worth. I definitely ask that because not because it's going to help me do my CMA, but because I want to know when I step in that door, if I'm bringing good news or I'm bringing bad news. And of course, I explained to them that I am going to try to see if we can justify that price by finding comparables that will support the price that they're wanting. But the facts are the facts. If the comps aren't there, they're just not there. Here's one thing that I do. I have one coming up here in North Canton. So at their closing, I sold them a house. They told me that, they're still getting some things ready on their house. They did not have to sell before they bought. They're cleaning up their house. They want to get semi moved in the new house before they list. And, at the closing table, so I said, so tell me a little about what you think your house is worth. And they mentioned a couple of houses they thought that were around the corner from their house that were 500,000. And when I looked, I already knew, because I know where they live, that that was not true, but I didn't disagree or anything like that. And I jumped on the MLS that same day, and I couldn't find a $500,000 closing anywhere near their neighborhood in the past 3 years. So I don't know what they're talking about. Unfortunately for me, their house should be more like 399, not 499. So I've got a huge gap to close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the comps that are the comps. It is what it is. It's a 2-story, 4-bedroom finished basement, 2,400 square foot house in North Canton that was built in the 90s. It is not 500,000. It's more like 420 at best. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to search North Canton. By the way, I've seen this chat go into the chat recently. Depending on where the location of the property is depending on how I run the search. For North Canton, I'm running all of North Canton schools. If it's in a more rural area, I might have to do the whole county. What I never do, by the way, is a radius search. It's like I never do a 2-mile radius. There's just way too many different properties within a 2-mile radius. You can cross over one street and into a totally different price range and neighborhood. So never a radius, always school district or even all the county if I have to, if it's a rural area. In any case, I'm going to run a search of actives and pendings and solds in all of North Canton in the past year that are at 500,000. So when I bring my comps with me to this appointment, I'm going to show them the comparable properties to theirs. And then that comp is going to show them the price. And then separately, I'm going to whip out the houses that have sold in the past year in North Canton that are 500,000. And so I'll probably range it. I'll probably do like 490 to 530 or something like that, just to pull up more of them. And the reason I do that is because I really want them to see now, here's what a house that's 500,000 looks like. And here's how it's different than yours. It's not just going to be about updates. It's probably going to have a 3-car garage instead of a 2-car garage. It's probably going to have 800 more square feet, things like that. In it quite possibly is going to be 10 years newer than their house, and all of those factors. And really how I present that pricing objection to them is, if you were the buyer right now buying a home, would you pay that for your house? That really changes it up on them. Questions about that before I move in to the next? Let me also mention, when you find out who else they're meeting with, Jeff brought up a really great point. He does a ton of research on that agent and the kind of marketing they do. What does this other agent that's, going to go to this listing appointment, do that either I don't do, or what don't they do that I do? So what kind of social media presence do they have? Are they on a team? Do they have a team? Who are they? And what kinds of things can we come up with that we do better? Now, it doesn't always work out so well. They could be someone who you're up against that, you can see evidence shows they do a lot. They do a great job. You're not trying to personally slam anybody. You're just showing, here's my presence on social media. Here's the marketing that I do versus this other person. Pre-listing packet. So you guys have heard me talk about this. We've done some workshops and we continue to do so. You should most definitely have a marketing packet for every appointment. That includes buyer appointments. So we've got buyer packets, we've got listing packets, and we even have like closing packets. A pre-listing packet is something that is going to show the client what you do for them. I like to keep my packet no more than 8 pages. It tells a little bit about me, tells a little bit about the marketing that I'm going to do. It really goes over the steps in the process, so it's beneficial for the seller. This is not an opportunity to rah for yourself. It really is, and what's important to the seller. So you have to ask yourself, what would be important to a consumer that's not necessarily just who you are and what you do. It's what are you going to do for them? So list all of the things. There's templates in Command. So there's, I believe, 5 or 6 listing template packets that you can use and play around with. Canva has some really great marketing materials that you can create. I like, there's a graph on one that I use and it says where your buyer comes from. A big part of that pie graph is another agent. So you can show them that, you know, on average, most buyers are going to come from working with another agent, therefore from the MLS, and different things that go through the steps and what they can expect is going to happen. Be very careful on the templates. You'll want to adjust every page. So it's a very generic kind of template where it says things that people do in other states that we do not. So you'll want to remove those things. If you're not going to provide professional photography, make sure it doesn't say that. If you're not providing staging, make sure it doesn't say that. So be really specific in taking your time. It's also really important to do this long before you have your first appointment. At any given moment, I have 5 to 8 pre-made listing and pre-made buyer packets in a folder ready to grab and go. So I don't have to think about putting one together because I have a listing appointment coming up. I know a lot of you guys are really brand new on here today. So I also want to mention this. Do not wait until you have your first listing appointment to buy for sale signs. Do not wait until then to buy your lock boxes. There's no way that when someone calls you and says they want to have you over that they're going to be wanting to wait until you order signs. Also have your open house signs as well, because that's something that gives you a great opportunity to try to get buyers. So you should be focusing on getting signage long before you have your first listing appointment. All right, touches before the appointment. Oh, let me also add, I email my pre-listing packet to the client after that pre-qualification phone call. I let them know that I'm going to be emailing it to them. I still bring a printed one with me. The reason I email it is a couple of things. I believe Jeff Glover said he actually has someone hand deliver it to their front door. You can mail it. You can have someone or yourself hand deliver it. I just email it. The reason that I do that is because it gives them a chance to kind of look things over before you get there. So therefore it cuts down on time while you're there, and they can come up with whatever questions they might have. It's also another touch, excuse me, another touch before the appointment. And I can also tell, by the way, I also include in that a property disclosure. And if the property is built before 78, I include a lead-based paint disclosure. And I can always tell my high C personalities because they'll have had it printed. They've got it sitting next to them and they've already filled out the property disclosure. And even if they're not going to list, sometimes they just do. It's also a great indicator that they are serious about listing because they in fact filled out the property disclosure. All right, so 5 touches before the appointment. So this is so important. A text after you set the appointment with the confirmation details. So I've hung up the phone and now I'm shooting them a text. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I'm looking forward to our appointment on Friday at 4 o'clock. We'll see you then. 2 is the pre-qualifying call, the pre-listing packet, call to confirm that they reviewed the packet. So it gives you another opportunity for another touch. You email them the packet and then you call them the next day and say, hey, did you get my email with the packet? Did you have any questions for me? And also you'll see on the next page, there's some other opportunities to ask a few more questions to keep that conversation going with them. And then you do the text message while you're on the way. And I love this step that I haven't been doing that. And I love that he said that, because he's exactly right when he was talking in the class, that I can't tell you how many times I've showed up for a listing appointment and either I pull in the driveway and someone else's for sale signs in the yard and no one bothered to call me to cancel the appointment, or they don't answer the door. Like, I've actually been to a listing appointment where, and it's never the ones that are nearby, by the way. Somehow it's always the ones where you're driving 45 minutes. I was knocking on the door, the screen was closed, but the door was open. I can hear a dog barking. I was calling because they weren't answering. I can hear the phone ringing and they never came to the door. Like, it's one thing for a buyer to no show you, but a seller to no show you at their own house when you know they're in there is crazy. But chances are it's that they met with another agent and they listed it and they didn't know how to tell you. So either they just are not going to answer the door, which is what happened to me in this case, or they're going to list with somebody else and you'll have wasted your time. So text that you're on the way. All right, so before we jump into the 17 steps during the appointment, anyone have any thoughts, examples, anything they'd like to share, or any questions they have about the prior to the listing appointment?
I have a few. Do you mind sending out what a disc is?
Absolutely. Yep, I will send that to you.
Okay, and then I haven't started getting my signage or the packet. Do you know where I can get the signage and the packet as well? Like, can I have someone make it for me?
So you're not required to do your signage, so for sale signs, you can get them anywhere. You don't have to do it through the companies that we use through KW, but I highly recommend it. Kirsten, you're up north, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might want to ask Janice where she gets her for sale signs at. I'm not 100% sure for living. I can tell you for legacy, in the Google Drive, there's a whole packet. ALD is the company that we use. Now, it doesn't mean that you couldn't use ALD, but then you have to drive to Canton to pick up your signs.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
No, yeah, and I believe the place for living is really just down the street from the Solon office. So I would check back with Janice on that one. But as for buyer and seller packets, there are templates of those packets in Designs in Command.
Okay.
And we do workshops. I usually do about 4 different buyer seller packet workshops throughout the year.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else? I saw we had a couple things in the chat. Yep, I can send out the link. You know, what I'll do is I'll put the link for the disc in the chat. And then you guys can do it. And so it's about a half-hour test. The results will get sent to the office and then to me, and then I can send those over to you. All right. So 17 steps during the appointment. Number 1. So if anyone follows Jeff Glover, you know he's all about his list. So everything that he does is list, list, list. So I love that because it helps it, it really helps for keeping yourself organized and following different steps. All right. So set the tone, talk to them as if they're already your client and that they're signing. So let me pause there for a second. That doesn't mean act presumptuous. There's a big difference by acting kind of like you have a chip on your shoulder and presumptuous than saying things like, I'm so excited to be here and getting your home ready to put on the market. That's entirely a different way of handling the conversation. And by the way, this is why we do scripting every other Friday morning, and that a good amount of you guys, and some of you maybe don't do this, but have scripting partners. I can tell you there's always somebody who's willing to be a scripting partner. So please shout out in the chat or let Janice or I know, and we're happy to, place you with somebody to be able to help you out with that. Because it really helps if you can practice these kinds of things on each other rather than right there when you're, sitting in front of the seller. Um, Reviewing the packet, like I said, mentioned before, I always bring a copy, and then we're going to, of course, be going over that packet. So I would say when you first get to the house, one of the first things that I do is I want to sit down, and I prefer, not everybody does, um, I prefer to sit at the kitchen table. I don't prefer to sit in somebody's living room on their couch. It's just too comfortable. It's awkward to try to pass papers across the living room. So if all possible, dining room table, honestly, I would rather stand at someone's kitchen counter than go try to sit in their living room. So I would also say this. Buyers, when you're showing them houses, we want them to have the feeling of emotion. We want them to make connections with the house. So that way they can, decide if they want to make an offer. With a seller, we really want to take the emotion out of it and make it more, and I don't mean this in the way of this is a business transaction and we're not trying to get comfortable with them. I'm saying though, we need to keep it business and try to get them to take the emotion out of it because this is their home. And this is sometimes it's just so personal for them that it's really hard to be doing this sale. Not everybody's selling because they're happy about it. Some people are selling because, they're empty nesters and it makes them feel sad that their kids are no longer there or they're getting divorced or somebody passed away. Or even if they're moving out of state and they're excited about it, it's just hard to detach themselves from their home that they've lived in for years. So we want to try to keep it as comfortable and making a connection with them personally, but feeling also like we're here to do business, which I don't feel can happen sitting on someone's couch. In any case, all right. So tour the home and takes notes and measure rooms. So do not just wait to measure rooms until you go back to do photos. Measure the rooms there. That starts to give the seller that you've got some skin in the game and that you're actually taking the time to do the things that you should be doing, even if they aren't going to list the house with you. You should never go to a listing appointment without something to write on. You should be taking notes on every single room. You should be taking notes on the things that they say, the questions that you ask them, the questions that they ask you that you perhaps don't have the answer for right now. Definitely people appreciate that you're actually, I can tell you guys this, when I meet with you all one-on-one and I don't see anybody taking notes, my thought is you're going to forget everything that I just said, and then you're going to ask me again in the future. So I think taking notes sends a message to the person who's speaking that it's important what they're saying and that you're going to be able to go back and reflect on that information later. So it's so super important to do that. I definitely would never, ever, ever take photos at this appointment right now. There's no way that I'm going to walk through the house, take notes, measure rooms, and try to take pictures or bring a photographer with me. That's something that we schedule for when we come back to put up the for sale sign, perhaps the next day. So you're also asking questions as you're touring the home. One of the things Jeff Glover mentioned, and I don't do this, and I'm not honestly 100% sold on this idea, is that he asks the seller to stay at the kitchen table and review his packet while he's touring the house on his own. I I just can't see the benefit of doing that. I do like his script, however, which is I'd like to view the home from the eyes of the buyer. So, and he says, would that be okay? I love that because I feel like that's letting the seller know that you're gonna ask questions and point things out as if you were the buyer. So you're already anticipating the possible things that could come up from a showing. So I do love that script. Um, I would never tell a seller that there's things that need to be done in their house unless they gave me permission to do so. It's a real quick way to lose the listing if you start pointing out every single thing that is wrong with the house, because maybe they don't want to fix anything. However, This gives you an opportunity to ask, would that be okay? I would even go as far as to say, as we're touring the home, if you have questions about things that you should paint, replace, repair, please shout them out. Or do you want me to point things out that maybe you can do? At that point, they're going to tell you, please do not, because we're doing nothing. Or yes, absolutely, because we want to do whatever it takes to get the house ready. So you'll be able to know that. Strangely enough, once you go on enough listing appointments, you'll see the houses that are in great condition, they're always the same sellers who tell you, please point out everything that you see that's wrong. And the houses that you walk into that are utterly a mess are usually also the ones who say, please don't tell me anything, because we're not going to do anything. Clearly, because they didn't do anything while they lived there, so they don't want to do anything to sell. All right, so number 3, ask about any previous experiences with selling a home. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is this the first time selling a home? Have you sold a home before? If they have sold a home before, tell me about that experience. Was it a good one? What agent did you work with? What challenges did you find? You're wanting to get an idea of what impression do they have about selling a home so that we could try to overcome those potential obstacles as well. Number 4, lowering their guard before they hear what you're going to say. 3 possible outcomes. So this is where you're talking again as you're walking around. So we're going to, as we're, going through our appointment today, there's going to be 3 possible outcomes. Either we're going to agree, we're going to work together. You will not want to work with me, or I may not decide that I'm the right agent for you. So the reason that, he pointed out lowering their guard, when you go into it by saying there's choices here, if we're going to decide to work together, and it really isn't just about you deciding to work with me, this is a partnership, we're in this together. I may determine that I could potentially not be the right person for you. What might be some examples of a reason an agent might say that? Can anyone think of anything? So quiet today. I'll give you a reason. That they want to price their house so ridiculously high that there's absolutely no way that we're going to be able to sell it. And then in the end, they're going to be mad at me anyway, which then is going to hurt my reputation. I want this to be a wonderful, seamless transaction where they are raving about the work that I did and not complaining to friends and family that we couldn't get their house sold. So that might be a reason that we would choose not to work together. Number 5, get them excited about where they're going and why. And by the way, can I help you get there? We should always remember that every seller is potentially a buyer and every buyer is potentially a seller. Don't go in it just with the angle that this is someone I met at open house and I'm going to be showing them houses, and not ask them, do they have a house to sell, and vice versa. Most people are 2 transactions. And then you want to start getting them excited about it. This is also where we find out their pain points. Why are they moving? And when do they want to be there? Another question to ask is, how would you feel if you didn't get there? So for example, someone might say, we're retiring to Florida. When do you want to be there? We'd like to be there by June. How would you feel if we couldn't get you there by June? How important is it to get you there by June? Those kinds of things. And we want to remember that in the back of our mind now, we're revisiting that in the future. When we have challenges because we've gotten an offer that's lower that they don't want to take, we can revisit that. If we have to call them in 6 weeks and do a price reduction, that would be another conversation. So like, has something changed about you getting to where you're wanting to go in that time frame? Meeting their timing needs and discussion demo. So there's a timeline demo. I already have this in the drive under the Jeff Glover information. And what that looks like is this. So you're mapping it out. So there's no specific timeline. It's you filling it out. So you're going to be putting on paper, here's us today. Here's when we're going to list. And in this market, based on the CMA, the average days on market is this. It normally takes this many days to close. And then if we negotiate some possession, here's our move date. And so you need to be able to know how to go through timeline with your sellers. I mean, on average, you can use the rule of thumb 30 days to close and potentially some possession time. That's not a guarantee. You have to be able to negotiate possession time for the seller to stay there. So you want to keep adjusting that timeline based on, how they proceed through. When we get back to the pricing conversation, we're going to go back to that timeline again. And we're going to say, okay, well, at this price, we're going to need to add an extra blank number of weeks to the market time. And how do you feel about then where you land to be able to move? And it's always questions because you're asking them, how do you feel about that? Another really important thing to know is that sellers tend to look at that days on market on your spreadsheet that you're going to bring. That's your CMA. And they don't understand this when we get to pricing objections, that days on market doesn't bring them more money. It brings them less. So if we price it right at the beginning, we'll actually get a higher price for the house than the longer you're on the market. I love it when sellers say, we've got nothing but time, so we'll wait it out. What they don't realize is the longer on the market, and if you bring the right CMA report, which I can show you all, the very last column will show you the percentage that they got from their original listing price. And you'll see if you look at the high days on market, that percentage drops. So the longer on the market, the less money they're going to get for their original list price. Let's see. So letting them know that we control the marketing and they control the condition of their home and the price, which takes the time. Confirm the home information as you're reviewing the CMA. Nothing worse than sitting there and not having the correct square footage, bedroom count, that kind of thing. So I always print the tax record and bring that with me, and we go over that first. So does this look correct to you? Your home is 2,400 square feet, blah, 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 and go over that basic information. Number 8, set the stage for the pricing discussion. Going over active listings, so that's our competition, pendings, and then sold. And always mentioning that these sold properties, this is what the appraiser is going to look at. The appraiser doesn't care about your competition. They care about what has sold. So here's a nice little script here. My job is to get you the most for your home as possible. It's also in my best interest to get you that amount, because then you'll tell your friends and family what a great job I did and refer me business in the future. However, sometimes I have to be honest as well as we work together. So I love that as kind of a little disclaimer saying, just so that you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm always going to be working towards you getting the most for your house and what's in your best interest. However, there are going to be times where I have to be honest with you. And that might be the time where you're telling them, this is a fantastic offer. I don't know why you're being stubborn about these things. Or just giving honesty about feedback that they've gotten. That's the hard part of this job as a listing agent, is we have to be able to be on the same page with our client that way. Then you go right into the CMA presentation. Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's not good news. Always bring 2 copies unless you can learn how to read upside down. You don't want to be sitting next to them. It's something that you're going to leave with them. So I always bring 2 copies. Let me also note, I bring the agent full with additional photos and the buyer and the seller synopsis report, which is a quicker view, in addition to the quick CMA. So the quick CMA is going to give you that 1-pager breakdown of all your actives grouped together, solds or pendings, and then solds. And I try to start with going back 6 months. I'll go back further if I don't get enough comparables. I'm really hoping for somewhere between 5 and 8 comparables, if possible. Not always in this market possible, but that's what I'm shooting for. Um, based on the comps, the price of the house should be this. What are your thoughts and feelings on a price of this number? And then just kind of sit back and wait, feel them out, give them time to talk. They're usually going to say, well, I think we can get higher. Um, and then we're going to go into all those objection handlers that we script about regularly. Based on the comps, if you were a buyer, what would you pay for your home? That's a great lead in right there. We're usually handling objections along the way a lot. I never, if someone does say to me though, what would you do or what do you think? I tell them that I'm an option provider and here's a couple of options with scenarios. We always, of course, wanting to mention that, there's a value in the days on market. The shorter on the market, the more value that a buyer is going to get in the house. Buyers do ask these questions all the time and they should know it. One of the questions that a buyer is going to ask is how many days has the property been on the market? Just like how they would ask that question. And like, why would a buyer ask that question? They would ask that question because they feel like the seller is a little bit more vulnerable the longer it's been on the market. Sometimes, and here's just some different little scripts to handle objections throughout here, but are you ready for your home to sell and move on to Florida or wherever you want to go? That's where we interject those pain points again, where you wanted to be and when. Let me also mention doing a seller's net sheet is extremely important. You'll want to do there's seller's net sheets in the drive as well as in dotloop. You'll want to do a seller's net sheet at the listing appointment, and you'll want to do a seller's net sheet after every single offer. So if I have 25 offers, then I'm doing 25 net sheets. So that means that you're going to go through the breakdown of all the costs of selling the house, because what's more important is what they're going to walk away with. So that net would also, one of the lines on the seller's net sheet is, what do you owe on the property? So that's a great question to also ask at this appointment. You need to know that. How much do you owe? I don't need down to the exact cent, but I need an idea in the hundreds of, you owe 75,300, that's going to help me be able to show them what they're going to net. We don't want any surprises at closing where someone says, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to net 10,000 more. We have to break down all those costs for them. The title companies also have an app. I know Stonegate does, probably American Title as well, where you can you can figure out the closing costs and the estimate right from their app as well. Questions about that? One of the things that we're also figuring out on a seller's net sheet is the tax proration. To make it easy numbers for yourself, you're just going to do the whole year. Worst case scenario is always better than best case scenario when they end up with a check. All right, so 3 possible outcomes. If we get lots of showings and offers, we know we priced it and marketed it right. If we get some showings and low offers, we know we priced it too high, or we can get an offer that you're really happy with. So this conversation will future pace you for price reductions. Nothing worse than getting a ton of showings and no offers. So what does that mean? We've got a lot of showings. That means we did our job to market the home. It's our job, by the way, as listing agents to market the home and bring ready, willing, and able buyers. But we cannot convince these buyers, even if we're showing it to them ourselves, that this is a great value and they should make an offer. That's a decision of the buyer. If they don't see the value there, they're not going to make an offer. We even saw that in the crazy market we've had the past 3 years, even with all these houses flying off the market in multiple offers, the ones that were extremely overpriced did not. So even though buyers were willing, by the way, to pay $20,000 more than asking price if they were up against multiple offers, they wouldn't do that if the price of the house was already 20,000 higher and there were no other offers. It was the accurately priced listing that brought on the multiple offers, which brought on them getting 20,000 higher or whatever. Does that make sense when I say that?
Yes, I agree 100% from my own experience.
Yep, exactly. And it's a strange thing with buyers. Like I wonder all the time. So if there was no offers, this is not what you're willing to pay, but you're willing to pay that because you just want to beat somebody else. So like I think part of that's just the nature of competition. Um, let's see. Number 15. Oh, no, I'm sorry, back up. Number 14. Present institutional versus promotional marketing. So institutional, agents within getting word out to buyers and the public. Action plan like open houses, prospecting every day for buyers' website. Promotional is like your marketing, your social media, things like that. One of the things that Jeff said his team does heavily is they actually prospect buyers every day for all their listings. So they're looking at their database and seeing what buyers do we have that might make a great fit with this listing. That's a great thing to be telling sellers at the appointment. Hey, I've got this database of over blank number of people that I'm going to be able to market to and personally call to see if this house is something that they're interested in seeing. That's that kind of, they want to feel like you're doing something for them besides just sticking a sign in the yard and popping them on the internet. So proactively trying to do things to bring the buyer for their house. Let's see, if all goes well, you're going to close for the signing of documents and possibly handle other objections. So leading into that would be this. So the last step is, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you like everything that we talked about today, I feel like, we're really getting along. We've made a nice connection and I love your home and I love the opportunity to market your home and work with you. So if everything looks good to you, if you don't have any further questions and it seems like we've come to a conclusion on price, is there some reason why we wouldn't sign the papers today? And then you're going to roll into that objection. Now, remember, if we rewind all the way back to the beginning, you already asked them the question on the pre-qual call. If you like everything that you hear and we agree on the price, will you be ready to list your home? So now you already know what their answer was, 5 days ago or whatever. And so coming into it, you kind of should know now if they answered with a yes, where we're going to lead, which is this. Okay, great. I'm here. We're going to jump right into paperwork. Depending on what the objection is there, it could be a number of things. And again, that's where we practice scripting. One of the objections could just be, well, we want to discuss it and we want to sleep on it, or we want to pray on it, or we want to just have a private conversation about it. One of the things that Jeff mentioned, which I loved and I had not thought of before, was this. When people say this, we want to think about it. What they really mean is that they want to have a private conversation about it without you there. And so what Jeff said he does, which I thought was great and I will definitely use, is this. So what I'm hearing you say is that you guys want to have a private conversation. So why don't we just do this? I've got a couple of calls to return. I'm going to step out to the front porch or to my car, return a couple calls. I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes. If you need any more than that, please just let me know. You guys can discuss things and then I'll come back in and then we can proceed from there. So I love that. I think that was a way of getting an answer right now, but giving them the opportunity to privately have a conversation without you sitting there. And then again, just always assuming that they're going to sign those documents that day. And then just roll right into, tell me what questions you have. Where are we at with things? Let's talk about signage. Let's talk about where I'm going to put for sale signs. Let's talk about the lockbox and how the listing process works and how the showing process is going to look. And, I look forward to working together. And then, you've got that paperwork. Let me mention this, guys. Buyers, I probably almost never do buyer docs sitting down with the buyer. It's always on Dotloop electronically. Sellers, I almost never use Dotloop to do the listing paperwork. If I'm sitting there in front of them, I want to bring the paperwork. So you're going to print out and bring all the paperwork. Now, for some of you have the misfortune of knowing I have terrible handwriting. So I fill it out on Dotloop as much as I possibly can. So that paperwork is almost completely filled out, except for dates and price and things like that. And then all I have to do is say, okay, let's go over these documents, go over every disclosure, go over the listing contract. Hopefully they've already filled out the property disclosure. If they haven't, let me give you a little tip. It could take about 20 minutes to fill out a property disclosure, by the way. If they didn't already fill it out, I tend to tell them this is going to be homework, and I will grab it from them when I come back with the photographer tomorrow afternoon. And that way I don't have to sit there for 20 minutes just staring at them doing the property disclosure. Plus, it's also easy for them when you're sitting there to try to pull you into some of the questions on the property disclosure that you probably don't want to be answering. All right, so that's it. Those are the steps. So tell me, guys, what questions do we have? Do a stop share, and then we'll go into questions. Thoughts or questions? Nothing?
This
I
is
think
helpful.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I said, I think it's just a lot to process. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, and so that's why I've got it all typed up for you. I mean, also remember this, if you haven't been on a listing appointment yet, Denise and I will meet with you before your actual first listing appointment to help you prepare.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. Kim, did you have something as well?
Oh, basically just that everything you said about setting people's expectations and really digging in. For me personally, that's a hard lesson I learned about setting the price and making sure that you have the time set to revisit that and being really strong about that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and so like if like that doesn't mean that I won't take an overpriced listing, but I will only take an overpriced listing depending on how grossly overpriced it is, let's just first say, for a period of time. And so what does that conversation look like? It's this. Okay, I'm going to use you, Kim. Kim, I understand and I hear what you're saying about the price, and I totally get it. And we just never know. And so I'm certainly happy to market the house with all the power that I have in marketing, and we will see if we can get a buyer to be interested in that price. However, for only a period of time of what? So we're only going to do that for now. This amount of time depends on the market that we're in. Because the hot market we've been in, we look at those average days on market and say, you know what, I'm happy to be at your price for 2 weeks. But at the end of those 2 weeks, we're going to have to agree to a price reduction of this number. And I always, by the way, especially if I know I'm going to have a pricing issue, I bring a status change form with me. And I have them sign the price reduction right then so that we don't even have to have this argument again. So that's kind of how I handle that objection. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, guys. Well, have a great day. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm still got a sinus thing going on here, not feeling the best, but I hope you learned something today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.